the ability to persuade and get people on board along your career will be critical.
Hello, welcome to CAREER22, a series of videos about the skills we need for a career in the 22nd century. My name is Miguel.
And I am Milton.
And we are both founders of Ungap Education, and also both university professors. And after several years teaching and mentoring our students in the career starting, we realized that this is one of the most critical and stressful moments and processes in their lives. So we decided to bring you our learnings about the skills you need to start a meaningful career in these short videos. So what is our topic for today, Milton?
So today we're going to talk about persuasion and influencing skills. We see it as being, of course, a very important set of competencies and skills that you need to develop if you want to be successful in your career. And we have various examples and tips and hacks, if you want, about how to develop these skills so that you can be more successful in your careers.
So what exactly do we mean on persuasion and influencing skills?
So what we're trying to say here is that you need to be able to tell a compelling story and to be able to get people on board in what you're trying to do, but in a way that is inclusive, not imposing, if you want, that is able to integrate the other into your own story. So we see that those that are more effective in communicating and in persuading others do it in a way that is inclusive, that is able to involve and create what I like to say resonance with others, right? And also, especially today, when people are able so much more easily to detect falsehood and detect people who are maybe not so authentic, your ability to communicate in a convincing way and yet humble way is important for you to be able to progress in your careers.
So is this a skill that is important on, kind of how to sell yourself, how to convince others to, hire you or bring you into the company? Or is it also something that it's important after you start working in a particular job or mission?
You will always need it, right? So whenever you're trying to get a job and trying to get persuade the employer to hire you, or whether you're setting up your own business and trying to get investors to invest in your business, or whether you're holding a pitch for a new product launch in your company and you want to get people on board, all this requires the ability to persuade and influence others. But again, is that ability to tell a convincing and compelling story, get people on board, but at the same time involve them and take them in that journey with you while integrating their own needs and thoughts.
Okay, so can you give me examples of how persuasion and influencing skills can play a definite role in a career scope?
Well, yes, we have a few examples that I'd like to share. I mean, one that I like in particular is from a well-known journalist that once told me this story about being rejected at a well-known university in the US. And her determination was such that she traveled all the way there, went to the rector's office and told the why and the reason why she wanted to study there and how it played a role in her larger ambition in her life and the larger purpose that she had. And that was so convincing and so powerful that the rector actually decided to take her into that well-known university, and she completed the study actually with very good grades. But it tells about the importance of determination in persuading others. It tells about the importance of being very much aware about your purpose and communicating that purpose, and at the same time integrating the other, in this case, the role the university could play in her career to put it all together. So I think that determination, purpose, the integration of that, and the empathy that she was able to build in that particular moment was critical to make this a success. For me, it's a very good example of the power of persuasion in developing your career.
Yeah, great one. I also, while you were talking, I also come up with an example from a very young trainee. He was assistant product manager in a fast-moving consumer goods multinational, and he was actually responsible for managing kind of the worst performing products in the entire portfolio. So that those two products were kind of the last priority on everyone's list. So he had to kind of convince the salespeople in order, for them to actually, support a specific marketing promotion he was actually creating. So I remember that the way he decided to approach that challenge, to persuade and bring on board an entire sales team of more than 100 people, was actually, rather than presenting arguments, he just presented 3 slides. The first slide was a jungle with lots of animals, okay, and he put that slide on the presentation and said, okay, you have like 10 seconds to look at this image. And everybody was kind of, what's this? So he got the attention. So that's the first part of the persuasion, you hook your audience. The second part, just remove that slide, and put up a second slide, which was a question, what animals did you saw on that jungle? And everybody starts saying the big animals like elephant and giraffe and rhino and I don't know, a big bird, a lion, whatever. And when nobody else would had more animals, he just presented the next slide, and the next slide was basically everybody saw the big animals, but what about these small mouse? What about other animal, very small animal? And nobody actually saw those 2 animals. And then he said, okay, the big animals are the big products that you have in your priority list, and the small animals also make the ecosystem work and are, nobody cares about them and nobody sees them in the day-to-day. So that was kind of his persuasion to make the sales team understand that in order to have a thriving ecosystem, he had to also look at those small animals. And from then on, I think he not only was, credited with a lot more credibility in terms of, professional performance, but also I think everybody understood that those 2 products were important. So it was a persuasion and influencing skills with just a small 3 slides jungle game, and he basically put them on board to help those 2 products because they are part of the ecosystem. They have a critical role in that situation. So a young trainee with a very bold career move in terms of persuasion of a sales team, more experienced and sometimes more critic than anything else. Okay, any more examples that we can bring to the table to illustrate better how persuasion and influencing skills can help our careers?
Well, there's one example. I'm not sure if it's so much about career, but I think it's a good example that demonstrates the importance of action and leading by example, as opposed to only words and speeches and fancy words. Not always is a good speech the best way to persuade others, or a good presentation. And this example tells about a moment when we were a few years ago with a few friends back in the mountains, and we were close to a stream of water with a lake. And that stream of water was clogged with the stones, and it wasn't, it was not flowing properly. And this one friend of mine, at some point, on his own initiative, just decided to to start cleaning up that place. We were with a group of about 20 or 30 people, and he started doing that alone. And soon after, one more person started doing the same, and the other one again, and the other one again. And before you know, the entire group was cleaning up the stream. And even those who were more resistant in the beginning ended up doing it more towards the end. And in fact, which is interesting, they stayed longer afterwards because the other one stopped. And the last ones to get in actually continued for a bit longer. And interestingly, he was able to start almost a small movement without any word being shared. And everyone understood why we was doing that, because we all kind of wanted to swim in that place and felt, a bit dirty. But and by just starting, but by acting upon it, rather than trying to convince people that that was important, people understood the message very clearly. There was no need for words, and that action was enough to trigger a movement. So that to me is important, that we often kind of overemphasize persuasion as an act of speaking and building up a speech and convincing others by our words, but our acts and our examples can convey a much stronger story when you're trying to persuade others. And I think the same holds for your career.
Yeah, but just popped into my mind. I also had got an example of actions trumping words. Of course, it's not the same context as a career, but I think it can be an inspiration as well. So a few years ago, I was actually, marketing manager for a multinational company, and we were having a advertising pitch, meaning that several agencies were presenting ideas for new campaigns for our products. And one of the agencies actually presented a very bold campaign with a central idea based on a character, on a mascot, if you want. So this character was a little bit polemic, so we were kind of afraid, and we said no to the campaign, no to the idea, no to the agency. So they did not give up, and what they did, actually, they brought the character and put it in my street where I live. So in the morning, I was actually leaving the house and saw a big crowd there, and everybody was laughing, and there was the character there, the mascot, in real, live, and I saw the movement creation that was happening there, and I thought maybe we're missing something, and maybe we should readmit this agency in order to test if this campaign can be a thing. So to make this story a little bit shorter, just to tell you that we actually agreed on launching the campaign. The campaign was launched. It was a major hit, a major success in that country where we were actually doing the campaign, and it became, the character itself became the central element of communication of our brand. So to make your point, actions and creating a movement sometimes is the best way, and leading by example is the best way to persuade and influence your audience. So that's a great influencing storytelling that we have here. So let's try to make it more practical. How can we actually increase our influencing skills? Couple of tips. How can we actually do it?
Yeah, one would be very much related to the first example that I shared, is like you being very much aware of your purpose. But also more than that, and I do quite some teaching and some research as well on the idea of servant leadership. And it's very central to the idea of servant leadership, the idea of purpose and serving and creating shared purpose, right? So that you get people on board and you let them embrace something you believe in, and you involve them in that process, and you allow them to be an integral part of that journey. So we're not trying to get people to blindly follow you, right? But really more about creating resonance where people feel this is important. We want to be part of that. And then you put yourself at the service of others in doing that. So by one important thing would be whenever you apply to a job, whenever you try to get a promotion, think carefully, why is it important for you? And why is it important for others, right? Why would it matter that you could have, that you could play a role in that position, in that job, or in that company you're trying to create? So that sense of shared purpose and being very much aware and conscious about it will be very important in transmitting the passion for what you're trying to do. And that passion is contagious. So, of course, you need to be rational and objective and build your facts in your case. But by focusing on that why and that passion, you will be more convincing and more persuasive than if you don't do that.
Yeah, so persuasion and influencing skills is about actually creating that shared purpose that makes everybody join the movement rather than just arguing your way into your objective. Yeah, another tip would be, remove the makeup. Sometimes we see ourselves trying and pretending that we are someone else. Sometimes we see ourselves, covering up for our flaws or for our vulnerabilities, or sometimes even, we tend to hide the things that we don't know. And I think we have to embrace vulnerability and become more authentic, because that vulnerability and that authenticity will bring trust, and trust will bring actually, the persuasion and influence that you want. So I see many times in a career setting, people not telling the truth. And I think we have to tell the truth. And I think sometimes it's admitting something, and sometimes it's actually saying, we don't know. So my tip would be, embrace the truth, embrace vulnerability, and become a much more authentic and trustworthy person and candidate.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'd like to suggest is the importance of being able to adjust your language to different audiences, and also to be able to focus on the essential and transmit the key message, right? Sometimes people get a bit lost in using too many words. But what is the key message, and can you communicate that at different levels, right? One thing that I would recommend, something very simple, is that you practice in transmitting whatever you're trying to say with a 10-year-old or a 90-year-old, your grandmother, your grandfather, eventually. If you can explain at multiple levels with people with different contexts, with different cognitive abilities, with different experiences, you'll be much more able to persuade others and to convince others, because you are talking at a language and in a way that others can resonate with, right? So try to understand your audience, try to understand their jargon, the way they talk, practice your presentations or your speeches or whatever you want to use as a way to persuade others with children and older people and people from different backgrounds from yourself, and see how it comes across. That will help you sharpen and fine-tune your skills when it comes to persuasion.
Yeah, it's the granny test. Test it with granny or with your younger son. Okay, great one. Also, I think a good tip would be put yourself in others' shoes. And I think this is, of course, empathy. But it's if you want to persuade and influence someone, of course, you have to understand where they come from. And to better understand where they come from, there's a very basic exercise that you can apply to anything, which is kind of the war games. So first of all, you build up your argument, or build up your your pitch, or build up your kind of what you want to convey. And then secondly, you change position, and and think about yourself in your worst enemy, or think about being on the other side of the fence, and actually build up an argument that destroys your initial one. And so it's kind of coming up with objections. So all the objections and think about that beforehand, will make your initial argument, when you go back and revisit it, much more stronger. And this is so powerful if you apply this, put yourself in others' shoes in a career context, you probably will think about, okay, what does this company, what does this recruiter, what does this job, want? What are they looking for? What is the customer job kind of approach? And then with that, you kind of look to your own proposal and see if there is value to create. There is shared purpose and there's shared value to actually boost your own influencing skills and persuasion. So I think we have great tips here. Any final thought?
Yeah, I mean, I had maybe in the form of a final tip, if you want, or a final, I mean, in line with what you were saying about action trumping words sometimes. Maybe you can think every now and then you're trying to persuade something on someone on something you want to do, or you want to get them on board on something. Have a little exercise, how could I do this? How could I persuade this person or this group without sharing a single word? What would I need to do to get them on board without sharing a single word? That simple exercise, even if you don't do it, but it kind of forces you to really think from their perspective and to also be creative in how you approach persuasion beyond words, right? That would be a very final thought. Take with you some of these examples as you wish, adjust and adapt, but be mindful, of course, that the ability to persuade and get people on board along your career will be critical to make it a success, right? So that's it for now.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Milton. All the best and see you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye, Miguel.
Thank you to our viewers as well. Thanks.